My name is Steve Crump, and I am the president and owner of Volasau Farms, which is where we're at today. Volasau Farms came about in the 1880s when my great-grandfather moved down from Illinois to the Glenwood area, and they started buying orange groves. And then over time, they added to it, and then more family members kept it going, and now I'm the fourth generation. Volasau is about 200 acres here in Volusia County, and then we still have the original family farm that we still farm in LaSalle County, Illinois. The name Volasau is an amalgamation of Volusia for the Vo and LaSalle for LaSalle County, Illinois. So it's the two counties put together. So our main crop has traditionally been citrus, and we did everything: oranges, grapefruit, tangerines. We were transitioning away from that, and now we're doing much more vegetables in addition to citrus. My favorite thing I like growing is citrus. Without a doubt, I prefer to grow that. But I haven't had much success in the last couple of years. The citrus acreage is actually reducing. We actually have less because of citrus greening disease. Right now, we're currently down to about 40 acres in production. Citrus greening disease is a virus disease specific to citrus, but it's all types of citrus. So lemons, limes, tangerines, grapefruits. Every citrus can be infected by it. The insect that spread it is called the Asian citrus psyllid. So it's an invasive. It arrived, I think, about 15 or 16 years ago to the state of Florida, and with it came the virus disease, citrus greening disease, and now it is endemic. Almost every tree that's grown outside will be infected. Citrus greening is that widespread that it is considered, every tree grown outside is considered infected. 2 years ago now, we planted trees inside what we call a screen house. So this is a post and cable structure covered with a fabric net, and the net, it goes over the top and down the sides and is buried into the ground. And then we installed a roll-up metal door and then a personnel walk door. So this is completely encapsulating the orange trees to eliminate the small gnat-sized insect that spreads citrus greening disease. We have a special working relationship with 5 ducks that are in the screen house. When we encapsulated the orange trees, we also encapsulated an invasive snail. It's a little brown snail. It doesn't cause much problems, except the population exploded because we excluded any natural predators. There was nothing to stop the snail, nothing to eat the snail. So we went from a few snails to hundreds on every tree. So to get rid of them, we put in something that would eat the snails, and that's these 5 ducks. It took them about 6 weeks. But they have actually, we don't see the snails inside anymore. It's been amazing how well they've done. They're an integral part of our operation, is this natural pest control. But they don't ask for pay raises yet.
These are fresh from the tree.
We've done a few projects like this in the past where they harvested stuff from our farm and they actually cooked it on site and served it. Those were fun. But this would probably be the first time that they've done something off-site like this, and that's encouraging and interesting to be a part of that. The farm-to-table events they're important because they remind people that food can be local, and fresh local produce often tastes better. And it's part of the economic fabric of the community. The more diversity we have in our economic industry, it helps all of us. So we are open mid-October to mid-May, and we're open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays 10 to 4, and Sundays 12 to 4. And of course, you can find us on the website under Volasau Farms or on Facebook. That's another great way to find us. When you arrive, we encourage you to come into our little farm store. We'll greet you and show you what's available. We have a chalkboard with a list of what's available and the prices on it. And then we'll give you a basket and some cutting tools, maybe a knife like this to cut lettuce, or a pair of clippers to cut squash. And then we just pretty much turn you loose. We'll have signs on the rows as to what things are and what the price will be out in the field. But pretty much we encourage you to come out and pick what you want. I get great pleasure in growing plants, and I get pleasure in watching families harvest it and eat it and enjoy it. Our tagline is fresh, local, healthy. And I think the fact that it's fresh and local makes it taste better. Flavor and freshness, we got them beat.
I'll tell you what. So when you see the chicken served, Chardonnay.
You know, a lot of people start calling my dad, you know, probably back in the 80s, they started calling him the Barefoot Farmer or Barefoot Bill. And everybody, I assume, out in this community, which there used to be about 50, 60 family farms out here, you know, during the, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And so I think in those days, everybody probably farmed barefoot just because, people didn't wear shoes as much. My uncle didn't wear shoes till he was a senior in high school. My dad didn't wear shoes till he was in 8th grade to school. But when you're out there working in the fields, it's really challenging to work in and out of plants and walk in mud and all kinds of different conditions with shoes on, and then go to the barns and try to wash things. I mean, they just become covered in mud and dirt, and they become too cumbersome. Plus sometimes you can't feel plants or feel cucumbers with your feet when you're picking. So it's just better, easier just to farm barefoot because it's almost impossible to wear shoes out there. And so, my dad showed up at the farmer's market with those shoes on, and people start calling him the Barefoot Farmer. So we just, it's part of our, sometimes we have a logo that just says Barefoot Farmer, but Barefoot Farmer is, a big part of what we do. I mean, we use tractors to till ground and, to haul loads of vegetables and stuff out of the field and to plant certain things. But just about everything, from even the seeding is done with a hand seeder for most of our crops. Any of the weeding and stuff, a lot of it. Some of it's done with mechanized twirlers and stuff as you go down, but a lot of the stuff is done by hand. All the harvesting is done by hand. From the okra to cucumbers, lettuces, greens, everything's done by hand by just, myself and my dad and my wife. So some places, they might come in and do one big swiping and they'll cut everything out at one time. We'll harvest stuff for about 3 weeks. We'll pick cucumber patches over and over and over again for a 3 to 4 week time. Same with squash patches, same with kales and Swiss chard and things like that. We'll pick off the bushes, let them grow back, pick them off and let them grow back. And some of the big farms are gonna come through and make one big swipe out of them and, and then sell them, and they have fields coming behind it. But just with our size farm, we're trying to utilize, the stuff as much as we can, and then, switch over to new crops. So. Yeah, so farm to table event, all our greens are coming in right now, like our greens and our radishes. So we're gonna supply some greens, some radishes. We should have some early broccoli, some early lettuces. What else are we probably gonna have for that? Probably some early kohlrabi, and some spinaches, things like that. Probably still have actually some okra, cucumbers, some peppers, and zucchini and yellow squashes as well. So we got a pretty good variety of stuff. This is kind of a overlap time of the seasons where we got winter crops starting, but the summer crops are still here, and so we have a little bit of both coming in. So.
In my opinion, art is universal. It comes in all sorts of forms, as you know. And somebody once told me a long time ago, it's all art. There's good art and there's bad art, but it's all art, all art. So food always comes from somewhere, as you know. It's quite the thing to talk about these days, the journey of food. So when I know the journey of food, as I do in the case of many of these ingredients, it makes me really happy as a chef. It inspires me in ways that otherwise it's hard to kind of find that, that storytelling. I'm a big fan of telling the story of food.
feta on the tables, okay? Which will be probably now, okay? So as soon as Winnie gets utensils, you guys can come out with her, okay? And that's the team. Let's go out here to the table.
That's cheese. You want to try it?
Always returning them. So I'll just leave mine.
Here, we'll do cheers with water. That won't get me in trouble.
Tasting as you're cooking is an incredibly powerful, simple way of making sure that the food is good. And it's the power of tasting your food. Because something may look okay, but we don't eat with our eyes, we eat with our palate. I know that's a phrase that people use a lot. You eat with your eyes. Not really. You eat with your mouth and your taste buds. You may appreciate something with your eyes, but that's not how you eat. You eat with your palate, and you have to make sure it tastes good. It's sometimes overlooked in even the best professional kitchens. They take a lot of time to make sure the food looks good. And sometimes they forget to taste it before they send it to the guest. And that happens in every kitchen because it gets very busy. You know, it's incredibly high energy and things happen. But it should be something that should be a part of your repertoire, is to like, oh, let me taste that, let me taste that, let me taste that.
This is more of a family style, so guys got it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, you're gonna have to do something. It's awesome. Okay. Because like
I have Chardonnay.
yes. Look a fish. Happy to be back on Sunday.
Condos, then it turned into Airbnbs called Pirates Cove.
I just want to tell you what I'm cooking and what I'm using to cook. So the vegetables are from 2 farms, I believe, ones that I've supported for a very long time as a restaurateur. Thomason Farm, the Barefoot Farmer in Samsula, you may know him from the Volusia County Farmers Market and other places. And then Volasal Farm, Steve, the Crump family, they've been around for a long time. They're primarily citrus growers here, but they grow corn and soy in another part of the country for a different application. So that tells you something, because farming is challenging, and to make a living is one thing, but to actually make a good living is extremely challenging for small independent farmers. And so it's not uncommon for farmers to diversify and have to do different things for different applications, and we're seeing that here. So the vegetables, as I can see, this is real time, I'm just kind of making this up as I go. Squash, 2 types of squash, zucchini, there's some candy cane radish. Celery is not really in the ground right now, but of course Central Florida is celery capital of the world, as you know, so that's not a stretch. Peppers growing from Volasal, citrus of course, and then some fresh herbs. I have thyme and basil. I am a huge fan of local seafood. I don't know if any of you like seafood, but I'll make a long journey just to get just the right kind of seafood for my food. So this morning, before I came here, I made a trip to King Seafood in New Smyrna Beach. If you know the place, you should support them if you can. But I got some fresh local cobia, and it's one of my absolute favorite fish to eat. So I was ecstatic when I saw that loin of cobia in the display there. So I'm going to cook some cobia for you in a pan. I'm kind of known for my ad nauseum lectures about sustainability when it comes to seafood. And that's because, you know, it's a world that we're sort of unfamiliar with in many ways, because we can see what's above the ground, but what's underneath it's kind of harder to see unless that's your life. And so it turns out we're overfishing a little bit, and we're damaging the oceans a little bit. And so it's becoming harder and harder for these fisheries to survive the way they always have. But so that's why I feel like it's important to support all local things. And first, for me, for the most part, when things are local and small scale, they're almost automatically sustainable. If it's a small scale local operation that's independent, you can rest assured it's going to support the community beyond the business itself. It's when things get on a larger scale, then you kind of have to pause a little bit sometimes. So local cobia, I'm just going to pan roast it with the help of some white wine that the bar generously provided for me. And then just a little relish of local vegetables. So cobia is a slightly thick and dense fish, as you know, and I'm not sure how many of you cook fish at home. If you do, that's great. But I find that generally speaking, folks are a little nervous about cooking fish at home for a number of reasons: the aroma, the smell, the stress that you might overcook it, etc., or undercook it, heaven forbid. But sushi is not a problem apparently. So you know, those are all stresses. So cobia is a little dense. It's a semi-firm fish. It's not like snapper. Snapper, you look at it and it cooks itself. This is more like grouper, but not as dense as grouper. It's a different kind of fish. It's its own thing, as you know. So timing is everything. You saw how immaculate the timing of the food was this evening, because the team back there was doing a tremendous job making sure they knew when to cook, what to cook, when to bring it out. So the same is true with cooking. Vegetables are going to cook almost as long as the fish is going to cook. But I have to start the fish in this pan. So cobia, and I'm going to take them off this paper towel. So what that does by putting them on a paper towel ever so slightly for a little while is it takes off the excess moisture on the fish, and moisture doesn't get along with caramelization or browning, right? So that's like cooking 101. When you want something to get brown, you have to make sure it's relatively dry. So let's say you cook skin on fish, like say salmon. There's a very popular technique with chefs. They'll take the back of a knife. First of all, you pat the salmon very dry on both sides, but there's still moisture left on the skin. You take the back of the knife and you kind of brush the skin of the salmon. You'll be amazed as to how much more moisture comes off that skin. And that one little move will allow you to create a perfectly crisp piece of skin on a fish. So next time you make skin on fish in a pan, after you pat them dry, go one more step, take the back of a knife and just brush the skin of the fish, and you'll see all this moisture that comes out. And that extra move will make that skin extra crispy. I don't need to do that here because this cobia doesn't have any skin. Cobia skin is a little bit more on the dense side, so I typically wouldn't serve it with the skin on. Extra virgin olive oil on the fish and in the pan. In both pans, because I'm going to do the vegetables about the same time as I'm going to do the fish. Now, this is important. This is already smoking, so let me take it off a little bit. Don't be afraid to take off the pan, turn off the heat. Nothing is permanent in the kitchen. Everything can be recovered from, in my opinion. So it's not like you have to start over. Just take it off the pan for a moment, let it cool down. This is super important. Oil the fish or whatever it is you're cooking and season it with the oil on. I find often that I see a lot of cooks and chefs even who season their proteins that are dry. And in my opinion, it forms a more acrid crust than if you put some oil on the fish or the steak or the chicken and then you put the seasoning. That first step of putting a fat medium between the protein and the seasoning creates a more uniform kind of rich crust as opposed to a dry kind of a crust. Just try it and see what happens with you. So I don't need a lot on this fish because there's a lot of other things going on here. Now let me jack it up. Okay, so that's doing its thing. I'm not going to worry too much. I'll have to cover this because typically I would finish this fish in the oven. I would finish the fish in the oven. Maybe 6 minutes, 5 minutes. Any more than that, and you're overcooking the fish. So what if I told you a breast of chicken takes as long as a piece of cobia? How many of you cook a breast of chicken for about 15 minutes? Don't. It's about 6 minutes, if that. A breast of chicken is cooked in 6 minutes, about as long as it takes this piece of cobia to cook. And you'll be amazed how moist that chicken will be if you just cook it that long and let it rest in the pan. And by the time you eat it in 5 minutes, it's going to be perfectly moist. Okay, that's happening. Now for the vegetables, I'm just going to saute these vegetables. It's quite the melange of vegetables. I have garlic here as well, but I don't want to use the garlic just yet. You'll see what I mean by that. Typically people start with garlic. I like to kind of put garlic halfway through the cooking process, while it's still in a fat medium. Putting garlic in a moist medium is an entirely different thing. You don't get the flavor of garlic like you do if you actually fry the garlic, as you well know if you made sauce. So what's in the pan has a huge effect on what happens to the ingredients. If it's a fat medium, a certain thing happens. If it's a liquid medium, a certain other thing happens. If it's a dry medium, a certain other thing happens. It may sound like I'm overthinking all of this, but these things kind of come second nature after you've been cooking long enough. And they all kind of add a little something to the end result, in my opinion. A touch of salt, not a lot. Now we watch and wait for a second. Okay, this fish is ready to turn. If you notice, not once did I look to see where the fish was. It's the sound of the fish. So high heat is the trick in professional cooking. High, quick heat when you start, turning it down when you need to, finishing things in the oven when you have to, deglazing with some wine or liquid or stock when you can, to take off all that fond, F-O-N-D, from the bottom of the pan. The caramelization, the brown bits, of course the French have a term for everything. So fond, F-O-N-D, is the term for the caramelization that happens in the bottom of a pan when you cook something. So deglazing is just that, to deglaze, to take that fond off the pan to make it be part of the sauce. And that's where all the flavor comes from. You don't want to rinse your pan in the sink. That flavor that's in the pan is incredibly rich and satisfying, as you know. So, okay, I'm going to turn this fish one more time because I've got them golden brown on the other side. And now for some white wine. Just take it off the flame. And I'm actually going to help it along a little bit. I'm going to cover it and I'm going to switch off the flame. That's it. The flame is off. I'm just creating some steam in the pan and it's going to finish steaming the fish. This is almost done. I'm ready to plate this dish actually. I'm going to squeeze some fresh lemon on top. You know this is going to taste good, right? Fresh vegetables, wine, fresh herbs, citrus, fresh local fish. I mean, okay, I'm going to plate this for you. And you can do a rustic farm-to-table plating, as we're doing here, whether you even leave the thyme in there to show them that there was thyme in there, or you could take it out and be fussy about the plating. So I'm going to leave it in there, just so you can see. And now here's a little trick. This has a lot of seafood flavor. If you have the ability, the inclination, you want to reduce this wine sauce down. You've got the seasoning on the fish, the flavor of the fish, clean, dry white wine. If you want, you can put some more herbs in it and reduce it down. All of a sudden, you've got a pan sauce. So right now, this is without a sauce dish. I don't think it needs it because everything is fairly moist in here. But if you wanted a sauce, you bring this down to about 10% of its volume. So it's an intense flavor. Taste it. And the restaurant chef cheating thing is to put some heavy cream in it. You don't have to. Completely leave it out. Don't put cream, don't put butter. And this is a completely, dairy-free dish. It's not necessary. Looks tasty, right?
Yes.
Beautiful.
I very much enjoy what I do. We look forward to getting up in the morning and coming and do this. I really like growing things and I like seeing people eat it.
The reason we're all standing here and able to wake up every day and do the things we do is because we have food, and we're just, really the world's getting less and less access to local quality foods. And so for me, it's just super important that I'm out here growing food that people have access to. I have a farmer's market here at my farm every Saturday, so every Saturday people know if they need food, they need fresh vegetables, they can come here and get it from me. So That's really why I like it so much now. It's just I just see it as just such an importance, you know, just a vital link in our chain of life, and I'm glad to be part of it.